Hi everyone. I feel like it's been a while since I've been here. I am jumping in on Abuna's series, which is not an easy task, so bear with me because this is he's doing an awesome job and there's no way I'm going to be able to hold a candle to what he's doing. So as far as I understand, you guys have already done 4 weeks of the book of Daniel. So the first was when the problem hits, the second was when pressure hits, the third was when the impossible hits, and the fourth was when the heat is on. So today we're going to continue along the same theme, but today we're going to talk about when focus is lost. Oh dear, interesting. Philo, are you seeing all these notifications about people trying to get in?
Yep, it's fine, I got it.
I'm just going to ignore that stuff then, okay?
Good, yep, thank you.
All right. Okay, so I don't know what Abuna's process has been with, what does he make somebody read, or is that just me? I'm just the mean one.
It's a little bit of both.
Well, I guess it doesn't matter if he's nicer. I'm just going to ask someone to read. And I see that Mary just joined. Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
Good. You're generally my designated reader. So can I get you to read for me, please?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I just don't know how to say his name.
Nebuchadnezzar, but you can just say
Yeah.
N, honestly. I just skip over the hard name.
I could say what?
N, it's fine.
Oh, okay. I, N, was at rest in my house and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid, and thoughts on my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. Therefore, I issued a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers came in, and I told them the dream, but they did not make known to me its interpretation.
Okay, so today we're talking about when the focus is lost. So we're talking about essentially the book of Daniel and different elements of the story of Daniel and how that relates to your life. So you've talked about already, when you have issues, when problems hit, when the pressure's on, when it feels like things are impossible. Today we're going to talk about what happens when you're in a situation, and it doesn't have to be a difficult situation. It doesn't have to be you're in the middle of a problem or you're in the middle of a valley, but when you are somewhere and all of a sudden you lose focus, and what happens when you lose focus and why it's important for us to never lose focus. So Nebuchadnezzar, okay, was now in a good place, okay? He wasn't in a place where he needed help. He wasn't in a place where he needed to seek wise counsel necessarily. He was in a place where things were good, right? And so the quote that I want to focus on here for the first point is, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in my house and flourishing in my palace, okay? Oftentimes, what sets us up for losing focus is forgetting who you are and where you came from. So I'll give you an example. So let's say, so I can tell you personally, okay, when I was younger and I was trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life, what am I going to do with my career, applying to like professional schools, et cetera, et cetera. In that period of time where I was applying and things were uncertain and I didn't know what was going on, God was my everything. God was like prayer, like it was the height of my prayerful life. Like I was praying every moment that I could because I needed him and I was stressed, and he was my consolation. He was my hope. He was my everything. He was the only person that could either get me where I wanted to go, or B, console me when I didn't get there. So he was my everything, okay? Then you get in and you start and you have everything that you want, and then what? You're in a good place. Things are good. Not that professional school was very fun, but you're in a good place. Things are good. You got what you wanted. Like you're not stressed anymore. And your life is a series of peaks and valleys. And when you're not in a valley, it's easy to forget not to pray as often or not to talk to him as often. It's a lot easier to ask him for things than it is to remember to thank him for things he's already given you. And that is usually where the focus being lost starts. Because when you need him, you remember him. But when you feel like things are steady or things are status quo, you forget. You forget who brought you here. You forget who brought you to the point where you are. Nebuchadnezzar was at rest in my house and flourishing in my palace. He didn't give any reference or any like association to anything but his own success. He sat there and he was basking in his own success. That's like saying where I am in life, my job, my career, my education, my family, my everything, I worked for and I did. And it was through my own efforts, etc., etc. For sure, I worked, but I'm here because he brought me here. I'm sitting where I'm sitting right now because this is where he brought me. And the day that you lose focus of that, the day that you start to forget about that or you don't express thankfulness for that, is the day that things start to decline. And you'll see in this story with Nebuchadnezzar that this is sort of a turning point for him where things start to decline because all of a sudden he's sitting there and basking in his own success, his own efforts, and his pride is puffing him up, right? And sometimes success can be a little bit of a double-edged sword that way because everybody wants success. Everybody attain, like I'm teaching my kids to be academic and to be good at what they do and to do well and to work hard, etc. And this is not ever to take away from working hard. But at the end of the day, there always has to be the acknowledgement and the gratefulness for the fact that no matter how hard you work, there is always going to be like the element of him bringing you where you are. Like he takes your good work and he blesses it. And he takes your good work and he transforms that into, whatever you want to define your success as or whatever he's given you that you define success as. And the second that you lose sight of that and you lose focus about that, your pride has the ability to just seep in. And it comes in, it clouds your judgment, it clouds your perspective over where these successes came from. And all of a sudden, you start to attribute that to yourself and not to him. You start to feel good about yourself for bringing yourself where you are and forgetting that actually, without him, it wouldn't have been possible. Like when I give the example of professional school for me, it's the easiest example I can give because by all forms of logic, I should never have gotten in. Okay, those of you who know me personally know that I was not a very diligent student, like at all. Okay, and I got into my faculty despite logic and despite like just straight numbers. It should never have happened. So it's easy for me to always use that as my example because it didn't make sense and I should never have gotten in. And this was clearly him doing the impossible because I am was not even qualified to get in. But it's a little bit more great when there are people whose marks are amazing and they're top of the class and they are hard workers and they're not like me. I graduated from my faculty, not knowing 3/4 of what my professors look like because I'm not a good student. I never was. But there are people who they worked hard and they went to class and they studied and they worked very hard. And that hard work, God took and God blessed that. Mine was miraculous, okay? So it's easy for me to point that out, but for other people, it's a little bit great and it's a little bit more dangerous because God takes that hard work, he takes those efforts and he blesses them and flourishes them, okay? But here in this quote, Nebuchadnezzar is talking about how he's flourishing in his palace, how all the success that he has, all the riches that he has, all the glory that he has are a direct result of his own efforts. And that's dangerous. It's dangerous for those of us who know better. It's dangerous for those of us who know that we have to always be on our guard from this type of thinking and that we always have to be on our guard because this makes you the most vulnerable. Okay, I'll get someone to continue for me. Any takers? I know you guys all love to read.
But
Nice break with Abuna.
I'll go for it.
Thank you.
But at last Daniel came before me. His name is Belshazzar, according to the name of my God. In him is the spirit of the holy God. And I told the dream before him, saying, Belshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy God is in you, and no secret troubles you, explain to me the visions of my dream that I have seen, and its interpretation. These were the visions of my head while on my bed. I was looking, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its weight was great. The tree grew and became strong, its height reached to the heavens, and it could be seen to the ends of all the earth. Its leaves were lovely, its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. And the beasts of the field found shade under it, the birds in the heavens dwelt in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it.
Okay, so what's happening here? Okay, let's just go back for a second because I focus on that one verse. Okay, so this is a king. He's amazing. He thinks he's amazing. He's all high on himself. Okay, and all of a sudden he's having dreams, and the dreams are driving him crazy. Okay, like every night he has a dream or the same dream or whatever, and he can't figure out what it means. He can't figure out where it's coming from. He can't figure out how to make sense of it. Okay, so he brought all of the hocus pocus people to come and interpret the dream. Okay, and each of the hocus pocus people came and they tried to make sense of it, and nobody could make sense of it, or whatever they said to him didn't allay his concerns. Okay, now knowing Daniel, so the other name for Daniel is this long name. Okay, knowing that Daniel has done this before, knowing that Daniel can interpret dreams, knowing that Daniel is set apart from all these hocus pocus people, and that Daniel is like, he may not necessarily believe everything that Daniel believes, but he believes that there's something special about Daniel. And he believes that because Daniel believes in it, there's credibility and there is merit. Okay, so because he knows who Daniel is, and Daniel is like his first introduction into like the credibility of God, he asks Daniel and says, Daniel, I need your help. Okay, Daniel, like, I tried to ask all these hocus pocus people, nothing's working. Okay, I know that the spirit of the holy God is in you and no secret troubles you. Explain this to me. Okay, so in this passage, okay, the king asks Daniel. Okay, Daniel doesn't go to him and volunteer. Daniel doesn't go to him and pry his way into the situation and say, hey, I heard that you're having dreams that you can't make sense of. Here's what I think it is. The king seeks Daniel out, and he asks Daniel. He asks Daniel his opinion. He asks Daniel to interpret it for him. He asks Daniel. Daniel doesn't come and volunteer this, okay? But oftentimes, when we are in a situation, we ask the question, but we have a specific answer that we're looking for. We ask somebody their advice, their opinion, their, whatever it is, their wise counsel, but there's something specific that we're looking to hear. And as soon as that's not said to us, we get defensive, or we get prickly, or we get whatever, okay? And it's because that's not actually the answer that you were going for. That's not what you had hoped they would tell you. So I always bring this back to relationship goals, right? That's like the service I talk about the most often. And I always preface when I talk to people that, look, if you ask me a question, okay, I'm going to tell you what it is, what I think it is. And if you don't want to hear it, okay, then don't ask me. Because when you ask, you have to be prepared for what all the possible answers are, not just the ones that you want to hear, okay? When you ask God, you have to be prepared for what all the possible answers are, not just the one that you want to hear, right? So we'll go back to the example of trying to get into a professional school, even though I think this is a crowd that's a bit older than that. When I ask God, I have to be prepared for the answer that no, you will not get in. And no, this is not what I have planned for you. And the first time I applied, that was the answer. The answer was no. And I didn't know at the time that no meant not now, but the answer was no. And for me, that was devastating because I asked him assuming the correct answer. I asked him assuming that this is what he would give me. Like, asking was just a formality because I knew what I wanted him to say. But if you ask the question, you have to be prepared for all possible answers. And I talk about this a lot, even in the dating world, okay? Boys, if you ask the question, okay, you have to be prepared for all the possible answers. And the answer that you don't like doesn't necessarily make it wrong. Just because you don't want to hear it doesn't mean that that's not the answer that you need to hear. But you are less likely to receive a message that you don't want if you've already assumed an answer, or if you've already assumed what is correct and you're asking the question to seek affirmation or to seek validation for what you think you already know. And I can tell you the situations in my life where I have learned the most, or where God has been the most present or the most vocal, have been the situations where I assumed I knew what the right course of action was, and his answer threw me. And his answer like just completely like rocked everything I knew, or everything I thought I knew, because I wasn't prepared for all possible answers. I was just prepared for one. So when King Nebuchadnezzar asks Daniel, he's not prepared for what Daniel has to say. That doesn't make what Daniel says wrong, okay? But it means that he was looking for a specific interpretation. He was looking to hear something that would help puff him up, or that would validate how amazing he is. But what you want to hear is not necessarily the right answer. We'll keep going and you'll see. Can I get somebody else to continue?
I can.
Thank you, Mary.
No problem. I saw in the visions of my head while on my bed, and there was a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He cried aloud and said thus, "Chop down the tree and cut off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts get out from under it, and the birds from its branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump and roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, in the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts on the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from that of a man. Let him be given the heart of a beast, and let 7 times pass over him. This decision is by the decree of the watchers, and the sentence by the word of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, gives it to whomever he will, and sets over it the lowest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now you, Belteshazzar, declare its interpretation, since all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation, but you are able, for the Spirit of the Holy God is in you."
So I just want to point out here again, okay? So in the beginning, he asks Daniel, I'm having these dreams, okay? I need you to explain it to me. Then he goes through, he explains the entire like detail of the dream. And then at the end, he says, you are able, for the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of the Holy God is in you. Okay. So now you tell me. So again, he implores him. Again, he seeks him out to tell him what this is. So he is seeking Daniel and he is asking Daniel the question. Okay. So like, I just want to be as clear as I can that this is not Daniel. This is not Daniel seeking like entry into the situation, or seeking like to have an opinion in this situation. This is the king pursuing Daniel to ask him the question, okay? The same way we often pursue God to ask him a specific question, okay? It's not like God has necessarily pointed out like an opportunity in our lives and he's prompting you, but oftentimes we go to him and we say, this is what I want, can I have it? Or what is your plan about this? Because I'm struggling, okay? So Daniel was sought out, okay? I'll get someone else to continue.
I'll continue.
Thank you.
Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonished for a time, and his thoughts troubled him. So the king spoke and said, Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its interpretation trouble you. Belteshazzar answered and said,
Sorry.
said, "My lord, may the dream concern those who hate you, and its interpretation concern your enemies. The trees that you saw, which grew and became strong, whose height reached to the heaven, and which could be seen by all the earth, whose leaves were lovely and its fruit abundant, and which was food for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelled, and in whose branches the birds of the heaven had their home. It is you, O king, who have grown and become strong, for your greatness has grown and reaches the heavens, and your dominion to the end of the earth. And inasmuch as the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, Chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave its stump and roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze in the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts of the field, till 7 times pass over him."
Okay, so I'll just stop you there, but then I'll ask you to continue on the next slide. So what Daniel is doing, okay, is he's now interpreting the dream, okay? And he's quiet for a second, okay? And the king is concerned, like, okay, don't worry, if you can't do it, like, it's okay. Nobody can do this, really. Maybe it's not doable, okay? And Daniel pauses and says, no, 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 this is important. And it's almost like Daniel is sitting there and like trying to figure out how to deliver this difficult message, okay? Because his thoughts troubled him, because he knew what this meant, and he knew how it would be received, and he knew that this is not an easy message to convey to somebody, okay? But he starts off with the positive, right? The beginning of the dream is you, and you're strong, and you're great, and your greatness has grown and reaches to the heavens, and your dominion to the ends of the earth. And this is everything that the king wants to hear, okay? This is everything he wants to hear. He wants to hear about how great he is and how wonderful he is and how his success is amazing and how he's done so much and he's accomplished so much, okay? But then Daniel continues. Marianne, can I get you to continue?
Yeah. "This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon upon my lord the kings. They shall drive you from men, your dwelling shall be the beasts of the field, and they shall make you eat grass like oxen. They shall wet you with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever he chooses. And inasmuch as they gave you the kingdom to leave the stump and roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be assured to you, after you come to know that heaven rules. Therefore, O king, let my advice be acceptable to you. Break off your sins by being righteous, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. Perhaps there may be a lengthening of your prosperity."
Then it gets ugly, okay? So at first, Daniel tells him exactly what he wants to hear. Exactly what he wants to hear, okay? But then it gets a little bit ugly, okay? And then he starts to tell him, you know, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, everything will be taken from you. If you don't do what I'm telling you to do, then you will lose everything that you have. So, like, heed my advice. Like, what this dream means is that this is God trying to get an opening for you to believe in him. And if you don't, you will lose everything. And Daniel doesn't sugarcoat anything. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He tells him exactly how it is, because he was asked a question, and you don't change the answer based on what the answer is or how well it's going to be received. Daniel gives it to him straight. The beginning is you, and that's your current state, and everything is great, and you're doing great, and you're wonderful. But if you don't believe in him, if you stick to, you know, your own success and giving glory to yourself, and you don't acknowledge that God is the one who is ruling in this kingdom, God is the one that has given you everything that you have, then everything will be taken from you. And he even goes so far as to say, you know, let my advice be acceptable to you, break off your sins, blah, blah, blah. Perhaps there may be a lengthening of your prosperity. Like, you might be too far gone. I don't know. But if you try and you do this now, then perhaps things might get better. Perhaps you might not lose everything and you might not be completely decimated. Daniel tells it like it is. And a lot of the times when you ask God a question, even if it's not what you want to hear, he will tell it how it is, because that's what you need to hear. And I don't know about you guys, like, I don't often sit in a room and God just comes and sits in front of me and we have like a face-to-face, heart-to-heart chat. Okay. It often comes in the form of, you know, whatever. Like I'm super big on confession. Like confession like is my lifeline, right? Like I'm very, very like heavy on the confession side. Okay. And for me, like often hashing it out in the context of confession is where it comes. And oftentimes I've gone into confession about a specific issue thinking that I know exactly what's going to be said and I just need confirmation that like this is what I have to do or this is whatever. And Abuna comes in and just like completely blows my mind. And oftentimes like my assurance came from what I thought the church's perspective was on a specific issue. And Abuna comes in and just like it's like groundbreaking. And those are the situations where I know that I'm sitting there and I'm getting my message from God because like it was completely unexpected. Okay. And so often, unless you're one of those people that has a heart to heart, like if you are, there's nothing I can tell you that you don't already know. Okay. Often his answer to you can and may come from heeding wise counsel. Right? For me, it's confession, but for you guys, it might be something else. It might be specific people that you trust or specific people that you know, or like people that you go to time and time again about specific issues. And, you know, I know a lot of people who have like certain categories of wise counsel. So like when it comes to like going deeper into their spiritual life, they talk to this person. When it comes to relationships, they talk to this person. When it comes to careers, they talk to this person. And like each of these people is like a specialty essentially. Okay. Whatever. Like I don't know who you talk to. I don't know anything about your life, but whoever your wise counsel is, if you're praying for an answer from him, often his answer comes from wise counsel. Okay. And often his answer comes from like people that you have designated in your lives as wise counsel. Now, I just want to be clear, but maybe a little bit politically incorrect about this, okay? Because this is an issue that I find to be very, very important. So when I say heed wise counsel, what I should have done here is put like an asterisk, okay? Because you can't expect that you're just gonna like walk into a room of people and the first thing that some Joe Schmo off the street says to you is wise counsel, okay? Wise counsel is somebody that is like tried, tested, and true, okay? Somebody that you seek specifically for like, because you trust them to be like in touch with God and to be in tune with God and to give you advice that is congruent with your faith, okay? Like, I don't walk into, you know, like whatever, it's random people that I randomly don't know, blah, 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 and define that as wise counsel. Can God speak through the random? Yes, absolutely. Okay. But that is not wise counsel. Okay. That is God, like, you know, divine intervention. Sure. Okay. But that is not wise counsel. Okay. The wise counsel that you seek are people in your life that are established. Okay. People in your life that are like proven to bring you closer to God and not take you far away. People who like you strive to emulate their level of spirituality or whatever it is you're talking about. And that's why you seek them as wise counsel, because you want to be like them. Okay. Because you take what they do as like, I don't want to say mentorship, but that's what you strive to become, or that's what you're trying to implement in your own life. Like you don't go and ask career advice from somebody who's unemployed. No offense, okay? But like you go and you ask somebody who has experienced this issue and who has passed through it and who has learned from it and who is now better off for it. You don't ask somebody who's never done it or who's like still struggling with it. Like if you're looking for marriage advice, you don't ask somebody who's single. This is wise counsel, okay? Wise counsel is somebody who is established, who you trust, who like time and time again have proven that through their counsel, they help bring you closer to God and not take you far away, okay? When you are asking this question of whoever in your life you have designated as wise counsel, so again, politically incorrect, okay? I acknowledge and appreciate that God can speak through anybody. Okay. I acknowledge and appreciate that whoever you've designated as wise counsel in your life is wise counsel for a reason. Okay. I am not a good person. I'm skeptical. I'm cynical. I'm judgmental. My wise counsel essentially is comprised of my father of confession and my husband. That's it. Because I don't trust people easily. Like, I don't like open up very easily. Like, I don't do that. So my wise counsel is a very, very narrow pool. Okay, very narrow. That is not necessarily a good thing, and not necessarily what yours is. Okay, and I mean, I hope it's not, because it's very narrow. Okay, and puts a lot of pressure on those two people. But like, I feel like within the context of a sacrament, like, I'm less likely to go wrong. And like, obviously my husband is my husband. You guys know how I feel about my husband. Okay, so that's my wise counsel. Whoever your wise counsel is, the reason they are your wise counsel is because you trust their opinion, you trust what they're going to say, and you are less likely to dismiss their opinion no matter what it is. Okay, so I can and often do disagree with my father of confession. Okay, but I will never dismiss his opinion. Okay, and oftentimes his opinion throws a wrench in plans that I've already made, because even though I disagree, I acknowledge that he's my wise counsel for a reason. Because within the context of a sacrament, I can't ignore the fact that God can and likely is speaking through him in that context. Okay, so I am less likely to dismiss what he says, even if it is contrary to what I want or what I think or what I believe. Much less likely. Okay. If your wise counsel is established, you are less likely to dismiss them. Okay, but there's a caveat to that, and the caveat is like a balance. So the stronger you feel about an issue or a situation, the more likely you are to dismiss opposing views. Okay, like, just like, let that sink in for a second. So the stronger you feel about a question or an issue, the more likely you are to dismiss opposing views. So I walk into my father of confession, I feel very strongly about something, he disagrees, and I'm looking for reasons why he's wrong. Oh, he doesn't know this about the situation, he doesn't know this, he doesn't know this, he doesn't know this. And therefore, he's not wrong, but he just doesn't know enough about the situation, and that's why his opinion is what it is. Okay? Be very careful when there's something that you feel strongly about. And be very careful about being dismissive in general of wise counsel, okay? Because at the end of the day, when you seek wise counsel, you may not necessarily agree with them when you leave, but at the very least, it should be thought-provoking, because you have designated them wise counsel for a reason. And nobody is infallible. Nobody doesn't make mistakes. And your wise counsel, whoever they are, will make mistakes, whoever they are, okay? But be very careful about the idea of dismissiveness, because you don't have good insight into where you are relative to the situation, especially if it's something that you feel strongly about, especially if it's something that you're defensive about, or that makes you very vulnerable. You are much more likely to have an emotional response that could manifest as dismissive of opposing opinions when it's something that you feel strongly about. And then, what's the point of wise counsel? Right? If your wise counsel is only there to agree with you, are they wise counsel? Like, surrounding yourself with counsel that only agrees with you essentially feeds the idea that you're always right. That's not wise counsel. What you want is to be surrounded by people that are going to bring you closer to God, no matter what the right answer is, no matter how that answer makes you feel. What you want is your wise counsel to be Daniel. What you want is your wise counsel, even though it may be painful to hear, to be people that are going to tell you the good at the beginning, but they're not going to sugarcoat the areas of improvement, because that's wisdom. Like, coming closer to God means being refined, and being refined is not a smooth process. It's often a painful process. And if you don't surround yourself with people who can do that for you, then are you surrounded by wise counsel? Are you surrounded by people that are edifying? And even if you are surrounded by wise counsel and people that are doing that for you, if you are dismissive of them as soon as they disagree with you, what's the point? And don't get me wrong, okay? I understand the emotional side of this. I understand that when there's something that you don't want to hear, you may not be rationalizing your dismissiveness. You may not be sitting there and acknowledging the fact that you're dismissive because I feel X. That's difficult to rationalize, and it takes a heightened level of maturity. Absolutely, okay? And it's almost nobody's knee-jerk reaction, okay? But when you're in a situation like that, and when there is wise counsel that is established, and wise counsel like Daniel, who tells you something that you don't want to hear, ask yourself, why did you ask for advice in the first place? What about this situation is distressing enough that you felt like you needed to ask for wise counsel? What about this situation is like life-changing enough, or will change your path or change your management enough that you needed to ask for wise counsel? What about this situation makes you not confident enough to move forward on your own, such that you needed to ask? Because sometimes checking in with the magnitude of the situation brings you down a few notches in terms of your humility, and reminds you of the importance of the situation, and reminds you that even if they may oppose, it's probably not a good idea for you to just wing it, okay? And then ask yourself, why did you ask that person for advice? Why did you seek out that specific person? So for me, easy answer, he's a Buna. Like, okay, take this with a grain of salt. I hope Abuna Thomas is not on the call, because what I'm about to say is not popular, okay? It's not that priests are infallible, okay? And like, I grew up with that mentality of like, priests are infallible, and like that old school, like Egyptian, like, you know, you put a priest on a pedestal and they're never allowed to make a mistake, blah, blah, blah. And I've since outgrown that, okay? Like, I understand that priests are people, okay? And as people, they make mistakes, and they're not infallible, and they're not whatever. And I understand that about my father of confession, okay? I do, okay? And so when I say things like, because he's Abuna, like, that's not a general, like, all Abunas, everything they say is going to be infallible. This probably shouldn't be recorded, but like, that's not how I feel about priests. But I feel strongly about the sacrament of confession, okay? And Abuna is the vessel of the sacrament, okay? So it's not Abuna that's infallible, or it's not Abuna that I believe in, like that specific priest. It's the sacrament that I believe in. So when I'm asked, why did you ask that person for advice? Yeah, because it's Abuna, but it's because it's Abuna carrying the sacrament of confession to me, which is one of the most tangible ways that I can have a face-to-face conversation with God for me, okay? So when I'm asked, why did you ask that person? That's why, because I believe in the sacrament, okay? Can this Abuna mislead me? For sure, 100%. And I've heard of 1,000 mind-boggling things that were said in the context of confession, 100%, okay? But as a general, do I believe in the sacrament? Yes. So when you are on the brink of dismissiveness, okay, for your wise counsel, why did you ask that person for advice? Why did the king ask Daniel for advice? Okay? Because the king knew the spirit of the holy God is in you, okay? And that will remind you and make you less likely to dismiss that person, okay? It's, again, I'm giving very easy examples, okay? It's very hard to dismiss a priest in the context of sacrament, okay? But whoever your person is, whoever like your expert on the subject matter is, remind yourself, why did you ask that person? What about this person makes you feel like they are, like, I don't want to say an authority, but they are more trusted on this situation? What has that person helped you do in the past that lends you to believe that they are the right person to seek out for this specific situation? Okay? And when they throw something at you that you weren't expecting or that you're not a big fan of, okay, why weren't you expecting this type of advice? Ask yourself, why did what they say throw you? Why do you now have this like intuition to automatically dismiss whatever it is they told you to do? Okay? Dig deeper into your emotional responses, because emotional responses cloud judgment. Emotional responses cloud often what you know to be true. Okay? Why did what this person say completely throw you? Because that often sheds light into what you were expecting, or what you do want, or like what you didn't admit to yourself was governing your perspective on this situation. And that in and of itself can be enlightening. And honestly, like the point at which you acknowledge that you are not approaching a situation objectively or unbiased, like that in and of itself will change your perspective, because you can acknowledge your bias, right? Like there's a situation that I want to give as an example, but I can't really talk about it. So there is something, I'm going to try and be as vague as I can. There is something that somebody said 2 weeks ago that elicited a very, very strong emotional response from me. Like, okay, I want to say out of character, but like not that out of character because I'm like a little bananas, but like stronger than what my normal responses would have been. Okay. Extremely strong. Okay. And like when, I got the advice to just kind of like, dial it back, and somebody probed a little bit into why my response was so strong, I was able to acknowledge that it's because I'm very biased about the person that was being spoken about. Extremely. And like, it doesn't sit well with me for somebody to express something negative about a specific person. And that outside of the credibility or the merit of what was said, my response was huge because I'm biased about the person. So I wasn't approaching the comment or the situation as an absolute. It was 100% attached to my bias about the person, and I was defensive over that person. And just the acknowledgement of the fact that I am biased about this specific person changed the way I viewed the situation in totality, because it now made me aware that I'm not viewing the root of the situation objectively, or I'm not viewing the root of the situation for what it is. I'm viewing it in the context of somebody else, which is not unbiased. And it's difficult for you to be objective and for you to be unbiased about situations in your own life. I appreciate that, okay? But what we're striving for is to go to God for direction on our next steps and have that direction come solely from Him, not be guided or be like manipulated by what you want, right? So I remember someone told me a long time ago, like I can't even remember how many years ago this was, almost that there were like 3 levels of prayer, okay? And the first level was, God, this is what I want, please give it to me, okay? And then, that's the spiritual level that you start at. And then as you mature and you grow in your relationship with God, you get to level 2, which is, God, this is what I want, but if you don't give it to me, I'll be okay with it. Or if you don't give it to me, make me okay with it, okay? So acknowledgement that this is what you want, but that might not be what God wants, okay? And acknowledgement that like, if it's not what He wants, like it's gonna suck, but you love Him more than whatever it is you want, okay? And then you mature, and the last level, this person said, is, God, what do you want? Whatever you say, I'm good with. And so we're not necessarily striving for objectivity, but we're striving for approaching God and asking Him for direction without us trying to manipulate the situation in a specific way. That we want whatever He says He wants for us. And that what He wants for us is what we didn't know we wanted. We're just waiting for Him to tell us. Like, our goal is to approach God without bias about the situation, without like asking for something specific, but wanting only what he wants and wanting it because that's what he wants. That's our goal, right? So when you look at a situation and you acknowledge where your bias is, it brings you closer to the next level up, because the ultimate goal is approaching him without wanting anything specific or without wanting anything that is not what he wants. That makes sense? Okay. Somebody else to keep reading. Anybody else? Don't all jump at once.
I'll read.
Thank you, Philo.
All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of the 12th month, he was walking about the royal palace of Babylon. The king spoke, saying, Is not this great Babylon that I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty?
So I'll
Well,
stop you there. Sorry,
Mhm.
but I'm going
Yep.
to ask you to continue after. So he does it again. Okay. So the first part of the chapter, okay, we talked about how he's like, oh, I was flourishing in my palace and I'm so great and I'm so whatever. Okay. Daniel tells him all of this. Okay. And essentially, if you don't heed my advice, all this will be taken from you. Okay. And then, is not this great Babylon that I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty? Like, he clearly completely dismissed everything Daniel said. Okay. Like, he knew that Daniel was a man of God. He knew that Daniel was the right person to ask. Completely dismissed it. Okay. Because he was not able to acknowledge, like, A, his bias, and B, that he's defensive about this situation. So he obviously dismissed everything Daniel said because he just went full circle and did exactly what he did before the dream, right? Okay, continue, Philo.
While word was still in the king's mouth, a voice fell from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you, and they shall drive you from men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make you eat grass like oxen, and 7 times shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever he chooses. That very honor, the word was fulfilled concerning Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men and ate grass like oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven till his hair had grown like eagles' feathers and his nails like birds' claws.
So what happened? God made good on his promise. Like, we know that Daniel was a vessel of God. We know that Daniel was speaking exactly what God said. And God said, if you don't acknowledge who this is all coming from, it will all be taken away. And then what happens? It was all taken away. But, okay, to Nebuchadnezzar's credit, okay, he wasn't mad. Usually, when this happens to people like us, okay, we get mad. God says, if you don't do X, this will happen. We don't do X, it happens, and we still have the audacity to get mad at him, even though he told us, right? Like, it's like my kids. Millie, if you don't do your homework, then you're not gonna have a treat today. Homework doesn't get done, no treats are given. I have a meltdown. I didn't get a treat today. Yes, I know you didn't get a treat because I told you if you don't do your homework, you will not have a treat. Crying. My life is so hard. Everything is so hard. But I told you. This is exactly what happened. Okay? The difference is Nebuchadnezzar, God said, do this. If you don't do it, it'll all be taken away. He didn't do it. It all got taken away. But he didn't get mad. Interestingly enough, right? He didn't get mad. Let's continue. Get someone to continue here.
I can.
Thank you, Mary.
And at the end of the time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. He does according to his will in the army of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth. No one can restrain his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my honor and splendor returned to me. My counselors and nobles resorted to me. I was restored to my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all of whose works are truth and his ways justice. And those who walk in pride, he is able to put down.
So what happened? To his credit, okay, he may have dismissed Daniel and he may have dismissed wise counsel, okay? But to his credit, he didn't get mad when everything was taken away from him. Like he was decimated. It says, and he ate grass like oxen, like he was essentially made to be like an animal, okay? He didn't get mad. What did he do? Lifted my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me, and I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever. Because it's never too late. Never. Okay? And like, to me, this is one of the most hopeful parts of our faith, that it is never too late. That no matter how dismissive you were, no matter how biased you were, no matter like whether you listened to wise counsel or you didn't listen to wise counsel, whether you were angling for a specific thing, whether you were puffed up in your own like pride or what you thought were your own successes, it doesn't matter. Because if you lift your eyes to heaven and bless the Most High and praise and honor him, it's never too late. He's standing there waiting for you to look at him. He's standing there waiting for you to remember who he is and what he's done for you and what he wants to continue to do for you. There is no such thing as a last chance. Okay, I give my kids last chances. Millie, this is your last chance, and if you don't listen, it doesn't matter. Even if you do your homework, there will be no treats today. I give them last chances. Okay, he never has this idea of last chance because it's never too late. Like, look at this guy. This guy literally was eating grass like oxen, okay? This is not the description of a king. This is not the same description of somebody who built this great Babylon and royal dwelling and blah, blah, blah. This guy was driven from men, ate grass like oxen, and his hair had grown like eagle's feathers and his nails like bird's claws. Ew, okay? And God was just waiting, like just waiting for him to look back at him, to remember him, to just one line is what I'm waiting for. And then all of a sudden, the glory of my kingdom and honor and splendor returned to me. Everybody came back to me. I was restored to my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added to me. Like that. Because it's never too late. A lot of the times we focus on this idea of him being this like wrathful, vengeful, blah, 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 but we always forget about the compassion side of him. We always forget about the relationship side of him, that he's trying to get our attention. He's trying to pursue us. He's trying to like seek us out and get us to notice him and like, you know, like court us. Like he's trying to get us to notice him. And it doesn't take much. It just takes like a little like effort in his direction, and he's ready. He's ready to give you everything that he possibly can. He's ready to give you more than what you think you want. Because it's never too late to come back to him. All right, 12:59. I was on time today, Philo. Any questions, concerns?
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Questions, concerns, heresies, issues?
So I don't know. Are we doing something next week, like a series, or how's it?
Like, I don't know if Abuna's continuing this or not. I have no idea. I have to talk to him.
Okay. So I guess we'll wait for Abuna and then we'll update everyone.
Yeah,
I don't have any announcements myself. I think if you are watching on YouTube and want to join the Zoom, just email us at onroute@smsv.ca. It's also on the website, smsv.ca, and you can join the Zoom. If no one else has questions, we can end. All right. I guess we'll be in touch next week and update everyone. Just keep an eye on your emails and happy Valentine and enjoy your Sunday, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.